striking the balance in your day job with your development job. What in the world was I thinking? I thought that many times when I was doing this, but if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it in a heartbeat with the lessons I learned, and that's what we're going to talk about today. My name's Mike O'Neill, and I'm a retired division chief from a fire department in Southeast Florida. Prior to that, I was a aircrew on rescue helicopters for the Aerospace Rescue and Recovery Service. And I started at the fire service in the early 70s. And fast forward to about mid-80s, I got my first Mac. And FileMaker came out a few years later. So I started doing the FileMaker stuff at the Fire Academy where I taught part-time. And I wanted to do something different, but I had to be able to provide an export. The state wanted single field per record, 1,463 characters long, space delimited. I didn't have a clue what a delimiter was, and I was wondering, what's NASA got to do with it? You know, I mean, I was clueless. So I went to Monterey, California, and at their dinner night, I was talking to somebody, and I said, how would I solve that? He lifts his beer up, takes his napkin, writes this formula on it, and that was it. That's only 12 characters. Imagine 1,463. It took me a while to do it. I did it. Then 2 months later, the state changed their mind. Okay? But that was the first out of about 10 DEF CONs I've been to. And one group of people that has made a tremendous impact are people that are here. You come here to learn. Without those people, I would have been stuck. Okay? They helped me tremendously. I mean tremendously. And I'm humbled to be here because there's so many geniuses out there, and I'm not one of them, trust me. But the other group of people, FileMaker, everybody from the top down has been terrific with me. They've helped me when I need it, and I'm very supportive. So what are we going to get into today? We're going to review a research or resource file at the end, only a couple minutes to that, and we're going to build you a test bank so you can do your own helpline, so to speak. And it'll be a little more clear when I get into it. But for the most part, we got 45 minutes of rapid material. So if I'm going too quick, slow me down, okay? Now this is going to be for first-timers to the pros, okay? But let's clear up one thing. You have development job, day job, or however you want to look at it. Those are both positions with assigned tasks, okay? So no matter what model we have, we're going to learn something today that can apply to that. You could have somebody that runs a database business and works for a company, a different company. That's filled with problems, okay? But it's workable. You could have somebody maintaining your support, and that's a little more workable, but you still have issues. Then you have, let's say, a person that's a proofreader, works a 40-hour job. Then they find out he knows FileMaker, and they want him to maintain the server. And sooner or later, that person's going to be developing. So now you have 3 possible positions. Now, when you absorb those other positions, did they reduce your main job? And if they did they do it enough? And they probably didn't at all. So the other question, how many bosses do you have? 1, 2, or 3? It gets into what they call the unity of command, and we're going to get into that. It's very, very confusing. Okay. Now, what are some of the desired skills that would be nice to have? Well, not many people go into a position that can ace everything up there. Okay. These are skills you learn with time. And customer service skills, database proficiency. Mine was trial and error, mainly the error method when I was doing this. Then your time and organizational skills. That all takes a bit. Now the helpline. I already told you what my one helpline was the people that I met attending DevCon. Another thing I did, I would look at the database forums when people post a question, and could I answer that? If I couldn't, I went back later to see how somebody else answered it. The other important thing I want to know is when somebody's writing for help, because they crashed their database, it'd be nice to know what they did, because I don't want that script or procedure to come into my system. Now we're going to do another little helpline right now. How many people in education? Relate to education. Look around and find somebody with their hand up, okay? Okay, put it down. After we end, get with them, swap an email. Because not if, but when you run into that brick wall, you can reach out to somebody in your same occupation, and they may have an answer for you or direct you to somebody else. What about government, military, public safety? Any of them? Okay. Spot somebody. Healthcare. No healthcare? Oh, okay. 45 CFR is your friend. That's the HIPAA. Okay. IT. How many in IT? Okay. Same thing. IT folks need help. And private industry. Now, I went to my local university. They have a doctorate in computer science program there. And I asked them, I told them what I'm doing, and I presented them with some studies and stuff, and could we come up with a formula on how you should be paid? Here it is. Because if you're doing it, you're overworked, underpaid. I don't care how you cut it, okay? Just don't go back home and tell your boss I said that, because it's not going to fly. Okay. In the fire service, the division I was responsible for handled about 80% of all emergency operations. So I worked for a very good department, but with FileMaker, I made it better organized when I brought it in. Now, my end customer is the lady screaming on 911 that her baby's drowned. Somebody's trapped in a car, shot, stabbed, overdosed, having a heart attack, a stroke. That's my end customer. FileMaker helped me, and I'm not on the payroll for FileMaker, trust me, but they helped me organize things to make our department better. I did a lot of things and was able to come up with a lot of things using FileMaker because I could pick it up and use it, and I'm not the most genius out there. This is a custom function by a guy named Jason DeLuve. He's a brilliant math guy out of Annapolis, Maryland. We just wanted to look at our department, what the status of our units were in a 1.5-year time frame, in 15-minute blocks, how many units we had tied up. You go to it starts at midnight and goes up. What that meant is the higher it's up, the less units we had to respond. So this helped us in scheduling and stuff like that. It also proves we never got lunch because we were busy. That's just one of many things that we used. Okay. Now, I spent time in the 911 center where I learned about redundancy, backup, and disruption. We're going to talk a little bit about a disruption plan, similar to a disaster plan, and that helped me tremendously. Then I spent time in the fire inspector division. Has anybody ever been volunteered to handle a project? Okay. I was. We have a fire hydrant testing program. The insurance service organization says the city has to test the hydrants for you to get a reduced rate on your fire insurance. So this is a program, firefighters go out there, do their thing, come back, enter the data, and then report the ones broken to a repair company. Well, I had to look at what type of system am I taking over and figure out, am I going to keep it status quo or am I going to move it to something else? Well, the main component was who's going to follow me behind me? Are they going to be able to handle what I do? So I have to keep things pretty simple. Now, what I had was 5,000 hydrants in the city, handwritten notes, old style typewriter, word processor, Lotus. Everybody know what Lotus is? Similar to Excel. And DBase. I took a DBase class in college and I still hated it. So I looked at this and there was a lot of other programs I did that I had to convert. And I put this type of analysis on it to figure it out. Wherever you are, if you're going to encounter stuff, your boss man or the boss person is going to want to know why you're spending money for another system. So you need to have some sort of set of standards that you're going to evaluate. With me, the business model changed. There was no support, no knowledge, hardware outpaced the software. Nobody had a clue about the licenses. So I put it in FileMaker 2.1. That was in the days of Windows 3.1. If there's somebody from the previous system, find out what the pros and cons are, okay, and what suggestion they may have. It'll help you. And if you ask those questions, when you're asked why you're doing it, you just repeat that back. Your boss is going to say, well, you seem to have it handled. Right? Now, with that fire hydrant testing, what I found when I put it all in FileMaker was the repair company kept saying these fire hydrants, there's nothing wrong with them. Yet every year we're writing them up, and every year we had different people writing them up. So I went back and forth and got nowhere with the chuckleheads. So I went and had the company that made the hydrants fly from Texas, and they were not happy when they got here, but they went out in the field, they took apart a hydrant. And every hydrant I said had a problem, they found a problem. They were suddenly very happy because we saved them a lot of money in a payout action because this was a high value area. So FileMaker was helping. Now, I did a couple little solutions here and there. Then 7 comes out, and I build a 35 table solution. I get promoted into the 911 center as a chief officer to run it, and at the same time I offer my solution to the city. It was about done. The big mistake I made with that was I went from a couple of users to 200 users overnight, 50 installations, 11 locations, a server, and 40 runtime installs on the fire truck computers linked with thermal printers that link through the computer-aided dispatch system. I buried myself. So I would have been better to wait for a month or so, or a couple of months. Now, every solution you see up here, I convert it from paper or in Excel. Now, one thing I started asking when I was developing solutions, because I had to develop other ones to organize things the way I wanted to. 2 years go by and they moved me to EMS, where that's where I wanted to be. Here I was considered an excellent paramedic, been on about 35,000 rescues. And it didn't prepare me for the administrative aspect. I was swamped again, but FileMaker was stable. But I started developing, I started asking, what if? If I develop a solution, what if I want to find something like this, or from another table, or something completely different? So I kept it open. And just another example of what we used it for, ROS stands for Return the Spontaneous Circulation. We went and convinced the hospital to allow us to do data transfer over the internet. They didn't want to do it at first until I told one CEO his competitor was on board. Then he said, okay. Then I went to the competitor and told him the same thing. But it worked. The national average for cardiac arrest that is discharged without additional brain damage is 2 to 4%. We were at 8 to 12%. Well, we figured. We were very happy with that, okay? Now, what a CPC is, a Cerebral Performance Category 1, that's what that is. How many stayed late last night at that party? Okay, you were probably a Cerebral Performance Category of 2, meaning you need some sort of rehab today before your brain gets straightened out. Okay? So we were using this to help us organize to help our end customer. Chart on the right, one field, examining the 911 data from a SQL server with one field, just doing the scripting. And I brought in equipment performance. And I went to the equipment manufacturer, because we had $800 batteries on a piece of equipment. I said, this is how your stuff's performing. He goes, how would you like 40,000 worth of free batteries? So that worked. Okay. I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to give you legal advice. But when you select an attorney, it's a lot like a doctor. You don't go to a podiatrist if you have chest pain. You go to a cardiologist. What type of attorney do you need, or where can you do research for it? Right? Your user group. If you belong to a user group, talk to those people. Go on to database forums. Put a search for works for hire, copyright. A lot of brilliant developers have put their opinions in on that, okay? A lot of brilliant ones. Because these guys charge, or these attorneys charge you by the minute, okay? And it can be significant. The file that I mentioned that you could download has 9 legal links in it that you can look at, okay? That can help you. Talk to your insurance agent. And while we're talking about insurance, let's say you have a solution that produces value. That value is used in making a part. That part fails, causing damage, injury, and possibly death. And you're a subcontractor for this company. Who's getting sued? Both of you. They're going to go after the company that's a deep pocket, and then they're going to come after your insurance. But do you have enough? General liability in my neck of the woods starts out at $300 a year for bare minimum. Your errors and omissions, you're looking at $3 to $4 grand if you can find it. Good resource, talk to your homeowner's insurance or an insurance agent, okay? But talk, go on the database forums, you can find out a lot. You know what policies that your company has? What about agreements, contracts? If you come into your company looking for a job, let's say, and you start saying, well, I want a contract that's going to tell me to do this, 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 and this. They're probably going to tell you about that nice little building down the street that has those funny golden arches that are handing out applications. Okay? That's not the way to talk to these people. Okay? Do you have resources for a legal or court battle? If you're like me, you don't. You know, most people do not. But you can be nice to these folks. You can talk to them, okay? And the other thing you ought to be talking to them about is that the part failure that I mentioned, okay? Let's say you work for the company. The company is probably going to have a risk management division or attorneys or an insurance company. Their job's to protect the company. But you need to have that conversation with them. And if you show an intent that you're concerned about their welfare, that also evaluates to your welfare. But be nice. Be nice. Don't be confrontational. Now, my solution that I offered to the city, this is hypothetical. This did not occur. But let's say a year down the road, I want to sell that or license it somewhere else. And the city or the employer says, no, you can't do that. Well, why? Well, we allowed you to beta test it on our network. We paid our people to test it. We paid you to fix it. We paid you to go to DevCon. And we pay you to upgrade it, so that's part of ours. They say that, you say something else. Let's take it another step. You leave the company. Same situation. They want the master password. You say no. They say yeah. Question, do you have an agreement? If you don't, this is the guy that's going to solve it. Or the lady, a judge. What about trade secrets? Protected business practices. You copy that and put it in a solution, you're down the road, Jack. They're gonna, you're fired. You're probably gonna be civil issues and possible criminal, depending on what it is. Now, if you go talk to them nice, they're probably gonna say no, because they're in business to stay in business. They don't want to give somebody a competitive edge. So you gotta be careful with that one, if you copy it and put it into a solution. What about moonlighting? Let's take that solution or the scenario where you're running a database design business and you work for this company. If you're giving advice, it's only a matter of time before they're going to fire you. Mm-hmm. What about if you have somebody handling the tech support issues and everything? That's a better situation, but you still need to have the conversation with your boss saying, this is what I'm doing. And there may be a rare occasion where they call me. How do you want to handle it if that happens? That bosses do not like to be surprised. Okay? Let's take it another step. You used to run a business and you quit that to go to work for the company. But you're not going to leave them out in the cold. You're going to provide them support. Well, what do? You tell them, if you call me, I'm going to bill you twice. That's not right. They need you. They're going to call you regardless. What about taking the information from them, tell them you'll research it and get back to them, and then you do that on your break and tell them to try this. If that doesn't work, you'll see them at 5:30 or 6. But then again, you could go there at lunch, but if you're late getting back, you're AWOL to your other job. Okay? So that's not helping you. Which brings up another point. Could you take 2 hours and go do it? Yeah. But who's going to do your task? If you're doing 2 or 3 positions, Who's going to do those positions? Who's going to do that work for you? All right. Which brings up another question. If you're sick, you're on vacation, who covers those tasks? More importantly, let's say you have an outage in one of those systems. You have to devote all your time to that. Who covers your other tasks, okay? And that was really relevant with me. I was the EMS chief of a fire department, a major fire department. And then with these things, and there's other things that are coming that you'll see. So you need to figure out a solution. How you do that? You talk to them. You talk to people. How can we handle this if you're in that situation? Now, you've heard me mention a couple wisdom sayings. Now, I took a graduate level course in adult teaching methodologies years ago. 23 books, and I came out of that and I remember one phrase, gallows laugh. I couldn't remember the terms. I just never, ever stuck with those. Common sense is not so common. You know that better than I do because you're doing data systems, okay? Ron White, a guy from Texas, comedian, he says it better, you can't fix stupid, okay? You may not be able to fix that, so what do? Recognize it, overcome, adapt, improvise. Okay? You treat somebody bad, they're going to treat you bad, plain and simple. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And watch your facial expressions. The facial expression, or body English, is a lot of times holds more weight in your conversation. Okay? You're working on the left, you bring a toothbrush, she does that. She gets her teeth brushed every night. One on the right, she wants chicken. Okay? An emergency lies within the eyes of the beholder. It's not your emergency, it's theirs. Joe is with your company, been there for a long time. He's an elderly gentleman, makes tons of mistakes. People ridicule him, make fun of him. He's very self-conscious. You play your voicemail back. It's from Joe having another mistake, and you go, what is the matter with this place? Why don't they fire this guy? What am I, a geriatric babysitter? He's breathing my air. Get rid of him. I'm not for this simple garbage. I'm for the serious things. Well, I'd rather fix something simple than big. But before a person with that attitude handles a situation, they better make sure their data entry portions of their screens are correct and not causing the problem. Clean your house before you worry about somebody else's. Okay. Now, if you approach that this way, you're going to make the problem worse. And your boss is going to find out by the end of the day what type of a jerk you really are. That's how word travels that quick. Go visit Joe, sit down, and have a discussion with him and talk in English to him and have him show you what's going on. You should know pretty well what's going on. So when he shows you, try this with him. Joe, I had the same thing happen to me and somebody showed me what to do. Can I show you? Show him, explain it in English to him, then have him do it till he's satisfied with it. Then thank him for pointing out the flaw in the program. You're doing a couple things there. Positive reinforcement, and you're boosting his self-confidence. I've used those techniques on paramedics right out of school many, many times whose skills were not up to par yet, and that worked 100% of the time with me. If you overcome his self-confidence issues, he may improve to the point, and pay a little bit of attention to him, he may improve to the point where you don't have to worry about him anymore. But you did something else to him, okay? You were nice. You sat there, you talked with him instead of at him, okay? You told him you were the expert and you made a mistake just like he did. So he doesn't feel that self-conscious. You're his friend, his hero. Somebody talks about you, he's going to correct him straight. And your boss is going to find out what a nice job you did. And you may have solved the problem. You may have bought yourself time in the long run. A fish rots from the head down. I've dealt with many administrators, CEOs of some major corporations where their staff just unbearable to deal with. And they probably absorbed the personality traits of a person above them. That's hence the fish rots from the head down. And that gets their eye when you start a meeting out with that because they don't know what to make of it. But what do you do with this? This is another one you're probably going to have to recognize it and try to go around it unless you have some advanced conflict resolution skills or transactional analysis skills. The way you can approach him or answer him is either going to keep him going down a negative path, or you can learn to turn it towards a positive path. If anything can go wrong, it will, and assume. I use that when I design a loop or any type of flow. What's one thing you don't want to assume that's not in the loop? Allow user abort, set to on. You want to make sure of that. The other thing, you don't want to test it on a production system. Okay. Everything I've done, I use this stuff and a few more. It helps me. It works for me. It may not work for you, but try it. Give it a shot. You may like it. It's simple. Okay. Now, do you know what you do each day? How many people, raise your hand, know what you do each day? I venture to bet you don't. And I guarantee you your boss doesn't until you put it in the chart. Include your breaks, everything, for every position you do. And we'll get there in a couple minutes and you'll see. You have to prep for meetings, that is involved. You have to travel for meetings, that's involved. Okay? For every position you do. Now, do you know what's expected of you? And does your boss know for each position? I'm not talking about the HR job description stuff. Okay? And do you report to one supervisor, two, or three? And do they know, of the combined duties? Do they know about those combined duties? The unity of command, a person may not sufficiently serve two masters. The fire service has adopted this, so has the military. What this basically means is, the more bosses you have involved in an operation giving conflicting orders, the higher your death rate goes up. Major businesses are adopting this. It's called unity of command. You're told by boss A, do this. Boss B immediately tells you to basically do the exact opposite. You're like, what's on first? Who's on second? They're both upset at you for not doing what they said, and then they get upset at each other, and now you're upset at them. Nothing works out. Have a sit-down discussion with them. Do some research. Sit down and decide this out. Inappropriately managed risk is a disaster. We're not talking about disaster plans or continuity of operations plans. That's beyond the scope of this. What we're talking about is disruption. When I spent time in the dispatch center, we had electricity from 2 different electrical grids, 2 different meters, 2 ACs, triple automatic generator backups. We had backup servers, computers, switches, backup radio system, phone system, cell phones from 2 providers, sat phones. We had everything duplicated and backed up. It was a critical service. In the extras folder, there's a planning document. Go through that. It's a simple read. Ask you a bunch of questions. Okay. Now, one thing a lot of people don't do, because not many people consider what you're doing, multiple tasks. Who covers your task if you have to dedicate all your time to something else? Who's going to cover it? Do you have that prearranged? You may want to address having that prearranged in certain situations. Do you have spare parts? Where are they? What do you have? Have you practiced this for several hours? All right. You need just a little slip of paper. This is my disruption plan. That's what I want to do. What about backup data entry plan? Where are your forms kept? Is it kept on the server? So when it crashes, you can't get it? I did this in 9, FileMaker 9. There's a copy of a run report that we use. Because we use it in the field. They write down stuff, come back to the stations or where they get network, enter it. Or if the system's totally down, they file it and then it's entered later. Just something simple, but where it's going to be needed. Okay? Now, I gave this a name, and it may not make sense to you, but when I went into this division, I had a lot of people trying to offload stuff to me. Oh, can you do this computer task? You're so much better than I can, and it won't take you long. Don't fall for that. Tell them to practice just like you, or else you're just going to be overburdened. The other thing, if people that are new into this, they may not recognize this. A person works on the floor on the assembly line. Next thing you know, that person's promoted so they're no longer one of the gang, they're the leader of that gang, and they're enforcing company policies. Same thing with data entry rules. I had a captain that was typing all uppercase in the field. This boss says, can you do something? Yeah. We kick him out. He got all upset at me. I go, well, go talk to your boss, you know. So expect that. Expect that from people because you're going to be enforcing data entry rules. Do you have a suggestion policy where you work? Written policy that says, if you don't, you should seriously look at doing it. A policy that says, you want to make a suggestion, you do it on this form in writing. Suggestions take time to research. Most suggestions have a data component. That's why it's advising, it's going to affect you. Okay. With suggestions, you want the good ones. The non-practical ones, if they have to do it in writing, they're going to think twice about it and make it practical. And the frivolous and self-serving, they're not going to go to the effort to put it in writing. So you're going to lose those, which is fine. But what your suggestions ought to do is tell you, how is that going to affect the business? What's it going to cost? How long is it going to take? Who's going to do it? And how are you going to help? Is basically it. I had a purchasing person come to me and say, we're going to change out a medical piece of equipment. And I said, well, we need to sit down and talk. He goes, no, we'll save $2,000 on that piece of equipment. I said, well, we still need to talk because you can't order it without a prescription and then you have to go through me to get it. So let's have a talk. He wanted to replace my widget A with a widget B, which was twice the size in sterile packaging. Okay. Did the same thing, but different directions for use. To make that change, I had to modify 40 drug kits, 15 rescues, all the station supply cabinets, the main warehouse, modify the inventory, reprint the books, distribute them, and have an instructor teach 20 classes to train 200 plus paramedics. So I'm at $7,000 to $8,000 to save $2,000. Okay? People do not understand this about your data system. So you're going to have to explain to them why you only update it one time every 6 months or something like that. You may have to explain that. Be nice, be firm, but you may have to expect that. I had a captain that complained that the font size was too small on one of my solutions. He didn't bother to tell the chief that he complained to which one of my 100 screens it was. So I was about ready to start debugging that, and I saw this captain in a class. He's trying to read something like this. And he was the same guy that was typing in uppercase. Anybody have an idea what may have been his problem? Eyeglasses. But sure, let's change 100 screens so I don't have to get eyeglasses and lose my macho image. It can't be done. People were walking in my office, and I was saying, it can't be done, now get out of here, leave me alone, I'm busy. My own chief walked in, and I had to throw him out of my office. He's like, whoa, what's going on with Mike today? I was overloaded. On top of that, our own IT department, one of the members of our organization made some very negative comments about the IT director in front of their boss. What goes around comes around. So the fire department was not well liked. Every month I went to a meeting, and in that meeting somebody said, how's that piece of junk FileMaker thing going? And I just let it roll off because it was the betterment for our folks. So one day I was in one of those moods and I says, well, I had to call tech support. The person goes, really? What's wrong? It was like a boy at Christmas time. He was happy. And I said, well, they couldn't figure it out, so I had an engineer call me. He goes, well, what's it not doing? I go, it's not crashing like everything else you have in the city does. And he turned a few shades of red. He never said that to me again. He never spoke to me again. And it took about 5 minutes for people to quit laughing. But when that happened, I was actually looking for a way to try to, how can I convert them over? And I guess that didn't help me too much, okay? But our own, at the fire department, we had a guy that was a network analyst from IT. You call him with a problem, he'd tell you it's AOL. No matter what it was, it's AOL's fault. But he didn't like data. So he wanted to do, or they gave him a task to condense a bunch of 10 years of exports. So I says, give it to me, let me take a look at it. And he goes, oh, for that junky FileMaker? I go, yeah, let me look at it. Everybody was freaking out because it was 10 years of exports from a PIC operating system, fire reporting system. Anybody know what a PIC operating system is? You ever heard of it? Okay, now I'm really dating myself. Yeah, I'm older than dirt, as my kid says. Okay. Well, it was 10 years of exports. What it was comma separated. In the FileMaker, sub-summary report, search screen, made it look nice. I did it over lunch hour, gave it to him. Next day, he's bragging about FileMaker. We started to see a turn. I started to see a definite turn, and it was helping. Now, I wanted to deploy this real bad for when certain people in my organization would log in. But I didn't want the HR director or the union president in my office, so I declined. We all like practical jokes, okay? We all like doing them. And in our department, we were the kings of them, okay? One of the stations, we had a guy named One Way. He'd bring his own milk and eggs into the station, they're locked up. Well, we take out a lock pick, open it up, pour chocolate syrup in the milk, take his eggs out, hard boil them, put them back in. So we were the king of practical jokes. This, you could get away with it years ago, but you may offend somebody. Look at what's happening out in society nowadays. The road rage and everything, you could affect somebody's sensitivity, just like you probably don't want to say congratulations on your recent divorce. You know, that wouldn't be cool either. No, that's an emotional thing. You probably don't want to do that. That could affect somebody. You're better off leaving it alone. So what are the lessons that I learned with this? Well, when my attitude took a hit, I went in to see my operations chief and deputy chief. And I says, look, my attitude, and they go, yeah, they had a couple words for it. I go, I need to relook at this, reevaluate what I'm doing, reorganize some stuff. I want your thoughts. So here's my list of EMS duties. Here's my list of server maintenance. Here's my list of developing. Here's the tasks you're giving me. Here's the conflicting tasks I'm getting from these other chiefs that can't make their mind up. Here are the suggestions I'm getting from about EMS. They looked at that and they said 2 words, holy was one. And I'll leave the other one to your imagination. They could not believe I was that swamped and doing that much stuff. I wasn't aware until I put it down there. I swear I was not aware of this. So a good boss doesn't want to overload you to the extent where your attitude is going to suffer, because that's when you're going to make your mistakes. That's when your documentation suffers. Everything else, you don't complete stuff. Now, the conflicting stuff was routed a different way. That was solved. They got me somebody, a non-essential person, to take care of some stuff. They quit assigning me stuff. The suggestions, well, we had a little difficulty with those. Our own HR department had a policy. If you make a suggestion, you get a higher annual performance score. And we were like, what in the world were they thinking on this one? No conditions on it. So I made a suggestion and handed it to them right away, and they looked at it and they says, we'd love to, but no. It was drug test whoever came up with that policy. And this is a TO graph of that first solution I did. I showed it to a developer in San Diego one time at a DevCon years ago. The person looked at that and looked at me and he goes, you mean to tell me that thing actually works? And I'm like, that's my pride and joy. You know, that was a blow to the ego. But in my defense, it's been live since '06 and it's still running today. 0 crashes. And I told the people there, as long as they leave it alone, it'll be fine. They get in there and start doing their IT stuff, they're going to screw it up. Okay. But why did it look that way? I never had time to take the training series, which I hope they bring back, or the other training that's available. And there's a ton offered on the FileMaker website and other websites. There's a ton out there. I had plenty of time to make mistakes, but when you make those mistakes, it takes you, what, 4 to 5 times longer to get out of it? If I was certified back then, would the IT department accept me a little bit better? Probably. So think about that. Get your certification. Just studying for it increases your knowledge. Okay? Level the playing field. Now I want to go through a couple things, and then we're going to go through another helpline real quick, and we're getting close to the end, folks. I know you've had a long week. In the extras folder, go through those documents. That's why I put them in there. You're not going to remember everything I say. That's a more detailed thing. The questions for planning takes you through. Can I access the event logs at 3 in the morning? Do you have access? You don't have access? You want access? Call somebody in your IT department at 3 in the morning and tell them you need them to look up the event logs. You'll get access. You do that twice, you'll get access. Now, the people that are going to change email addresses, and I hope you do that, start your own test bank. I wrote test bank questions for the fire exams through a test bank place for a while. They told me a couple little tricks. I've lost most of it. But do your own test bank, your own program, and have somebody else challenge each other with questions. Just same format, import it in and out. This simple multiple choice. One answer. Proper is the key word in the question when you're asking a question. This pertains to the previous slide. I didn't have the room to write everything out again. But what is the proper attribute name to determine the file name? It would be D. All returns the file name and a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, if you remove the 3, you increase the complexity. So this is how you can test yourselves. Imagine if you had 8 correct answers. How many people you think would get that correct on a test? Probably the people probably wouldn't do it. But you can prompt yourself to test this way. What I used to do with the protocol exam for the fire department is this would be extra credit. Now rate your choices in order of importance. You can really quiz yourself, and that was the purpose of this, okay? Is to get you to swap questions with somebody else, or how many people are certified in 17? Okay, 2 people. This helps, it helps. Anything you can do helps, okay? And by the way, the subjects in the photos are well cared for with chicken and treats. Okay. Now, I'm going to go through this, but we're going to cover a file real quick. Thank you. That's my email. I will respond to your email if you have a question. Exchange email with your address, with your neighbor. Have a safe trip back home. I hope to see you another time. Make sure you do your evaluations, okay? If I didn't do my job here, helping you, then I don't belong back. But I would really like to come back another time because this is a tremendous opportunity here. And I will have updates, and this is what we're going to do. With this file we're going to review, if you want to suggest any changes to it, send it to me, and we'll update it. We'll put it on the list so everybody can benefit from it. And that's your evaluation thing. So in that download that I mentioned to people about, it has about a 25-page help me file, PDF. Okay? And when you open the file, this opens up in list view. Can you see that okay, or is it? Okay. And I'm just going to, typical button bar across the top. Okay. The menu leads you to the iPhone, iPad layouts. You have an about screen, you have add record, delete record, and save as PDFs. The links work in that. But every screen you're on, if like you see here, you only have form view for a main view. And every one takes that into account, depending where you are. The other little thing, and a lot of the stuff I put in this, what happened, I lost my voice while practicing for this, so I had 3 days and I put together a file. Now, I wanted to see sub-summary in the list form right there, in a regular list view. All right. Then you name, type, category. Now, the other thing I did is in the quick find, if you want to, you can type a find, there's 3 ways. If you hit enter, return, or tab out of it, it's going to activate the trigger. Or you can just do the value list. And this, and we're going to go to list view. Now this is, I was worried that the other convention was sucking out the broadband with all the gaming. But this is just one of the legal resources that you can do a search for Harvard Law. You have Cornell Law I have in there. There's like 9 of them in here. There's stuff for the HIPAA. This double arrow to the left, that takes you to the line item file that holds any attached files. You can attach a file. You can insert a file. I'm not going to do that. And if you have one attached file to your record, you can export it to the desktop from the form view. If not, you have to go to the line item view when you have multiple ones. Now, there's something else that I did with this is tip entry. You have then you have a notes box, which is right here. This tip entry, see how that blue highlighted in bold, little blue bold? That means there's data in a field ready to be displayed. Okay. Display it, you just click this box, and it displays it in the web viewer. I want it just to play with that. It's not really necessary, but you may be able to learn something on that. Okay. The export, this field right here, where it says no files, if you have a file, and we'll go to it, it highlights how many files you have. If you have more than one there, you need to go to this layout here, which is the line item where you have multiple files attached. Okay. Starting from the right, trash can, that should be obvious. The next one is a trigger going to the left. And the next one is red icon. They both do the same, just 2 ways of doing it. I left that in case you want to mess around with it. Okay. Then I did a little developer thing where you can enter as you make changes or whatever. That's one thing I was always very bad in. I never documented why I made changes, and you can do that with this. Now we got about 12 minutes if anybody has questions or anything.